Hey friends, welcome to the Church Planting Podcast. I'm Greg Nettle and I serve as president of Stadia. We help you start thriving, growing, multiplying churches for the next generation. I'm really excited about our guest on this episode of the Church Planting Podcast. His name is Frank Bealer. Frank is the CEO of Generis and is passionate. He's a passionate advocate for faith-based leadership, strategic innovation, and community impact. With more than 25 years of ministry and leadership experience, he helps churches and organizations align their mission with practical strategies that strengthen communities. Frank is especially passionate about transforming the conversation around generosity, equipping leaders with biblical principles to build cultures of generosity and fuel God-inspired vision. Well, everyone, welcome to the Church Planting Podcast. I'm Greg Nettle, and we have a very special guest today, my good friend, Frank Bealer, CEO of Generis. Welcome, Frank, to the Church Planting Podcast.
Hey, good morning, Greg. I'm excited to be here. What a great group of people.
Yeah, Frank, man, there's so many ways we'd go with our talk this morning. You have such a diverse history in leadership, strategy, just all but the underlying theme throughout your, let's call it your career, your ministry life, is a deep love for the local church. Talk about where that stems from for us, Frank.
Yeah. Wow. Great start to a question. You were right. I am uber passionate about the local church. I grew up in rural East Tennessee, and my family, we didn't go to church simply because nobody invited us. Like, there was a church on every corner, right? We were anti-church. My mom had grown up in church back in the day, but never went. I went to church twice from the time I was born to the time I was 17. Once again, not against Jesus, not jaded, just our family wasn't connected in the community. We were really just kind of off on our own. And so we didn't know people. And so I actually was playing football on Sunday afternoons with a bunch of guys. We were graduating college, tackle football, no pads needed, Greg. We just knock each other out, right?
Those were the days.
Yeah, those were fun days. We would jump the fence of a local high school. We'd play football. And honestly, I would get there, and sometimes half the guys playing would get there really, really late. And then half the time I'd pull up and they'd already been playing for a while. Come to find out, a bunch of them were made to go by their parents. They were going to church. And so I invited myself to this rural Baptist church, super small church that was in the middle of had an interim pastor, right? So they were like at half attendance. Nobody was showing up at this church. They're just waiting on the new guy to show up. God doesn't move apparently during interim ministry, is at least what I'm discovering, when I was there at 17 years old. Within a few weeks, fall in love with Jesus, give my life to Jesus, get baptized, and just start passionately pursuing a relationship with Jesus. And I am so grateful for the handful of people that reached out to me then, connected with me, cared for me, and it set something in me that there was no way I was going to do this alone, that there was something beautiful in the local body, even though I had no idea at the time how broken that local iteration of church was. I was oblivious to that. I just needed Jesus. I wasn't worried about all that stuff. And there was a few people.
We've never talked about this, so I might be stepping in some muddy water, but
come on.
Did your family follow you then? I mean, what happened with were they like, Frank went off the deep end? What happened?
Yeah. Years and years later, my mom, so I come from a very broken family. I'm an only child. My mom ended up giving her life to Jesus and getting baptized years later. My grandmother would come whenever I would preach, as the platform and stage grew or whatever. Yeah. When I was starting to preach as a youth pastor, there would be youth Sunday. So within 2 years, I was the youth pastor, right? So I went from not knowing Jesus to 4 months later starting a Christian punk rock band. You got to do that, Greg, for a little while. Both the lyrics are probably heretical if we look back at them now, but I was trying. And then that led me into youth ministry. And so whenever I did special things, my grandmother would come. She grew up Methodist, very, very traditional. I actually got to ensure that she knew Jesus about 2 years before she passed away and have a heartfelt, powerful conversation. So my mom would dabble around as I got married and had kids, but that was it. There wasn't any other extended family to kind of come along the journey.
Frank, the other theme that comes throughout your life, which I love and I'm passionate about, is just your love and commitment to children, to the next generation. Where's that come from?
When I was doing the punk rock music, here's what ended up happening. We would do large festivals, but that wasn't enough to pay the bills. We weren't that special. We weren't on a big label, super small label. And so we would go, and in between, to have gas money, we would travel and do these youth lock-ins or youth late night events, usually in the basement of a small church. And we would play our songs. Honestly, the audio was so terrible. I mean, it was so tough. And then we would, in order to pay for it, because we'd never get a big enough stipend check or whatever for doing it, we would sell photos of the band and we would autograph them after the show, because I could make margin on that more than the CDs. And so we would say after, and these kids would come get a CD and a picture, these black and white pictures, and they would tell us their life story. And hearing them, and then I would leave. And there was no Facebook or Instagram. Yeah. There was no way to stay engaged. And I was like, wait a second. These kids went from me not knowing them to telling me the abuse they're navigating in their family or their life. And so we try to bring the youth pastor up to speed, or the senior pastor whoever brought us. And then we'd bounce to the next city. And after about a year and a half of doing that, I actually left the band to start just serving in a local ministry in a very rural church. Just trying to make a dent there, and fell in love with serving families. It was first students, but it became families.
Well, and then you founded, I believe, and led Phase, and then you were involved with Orange. And so this wasn't some flash in the pan. This is something you kind of committed your life trajectory to.
Absolutely. So I was an insurance business guy. So I do that Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And then on the weekends, I was just serving in the local church, serving youth ministry, kids ministry, did that for years. We actually, the company I worked for acquired a company in South Carolina. My wife and I moved there thinking it was going to be for 3 years. That's where we got connected with Elevation Church. And it was there that I became the next gen pastor of Elevation back when there was 4 locations. And so we were there during the rocket ride of 4 locations to 17. And my wife and I were over kids, students, and adult small groups for Elevation. And it was just like, it was so awesome to get to weave that together. And it was through that I connected with Orange and other ministries that were doing great things.
Okay. And then now today, I believe it was about a year ago, you become CEO of Generis. And just a shout out to Generis right now. I mean, I'm a raving fan, always have been, one of the best ministries in the country, I believe, has to do with generosity. How did you move into the generosity space now?
That's a great question. So 2 things happened. One, those were my 2 callings, family ministry and stewardship. So whatever church I was at, I was always behind the scenes because I'm a business guy. I was always behind the scenes helping with us designing buildings, being better stewards of our space, helping build budgets, approving budgets on the boards or elder board or whatever role it was at churches I was serving. And so I was always feeling the weight of that. At Elevation, we were building 2 buildings a year, and we were having to design those for family ministry. So I was in everything on both sides, helping feel the weight of stewarding our decisions wise, while also trying to create great family experiences. So those 2 things were just always percolating along the way. I started in February 2022. I started consulting Jim Shepherd at Generis. So I wasn't serving churches. I was serving Jim. Jim wanted some fresh perspective on the church and how we can better serve the church. And honestly, along the way, I fell in love with the unique, unfortunately unique. I wish this wasn't so, but the such unique model of Generis, so focused on discipleship. So, are we raising money for buildings and youth ministry wings and new auditoriums? Absolutely. But the disproportionate focus on the discipleship side, from kids all the way through, engaging the entire congregation and what it looks like to unlock generosity, I fell in love with that.
Okay, now let's shift now to our listeners and viewers, and you're talking to multipliers, leaders. When they're looking at building their ministry capacity, Frank, and I mean, you've been involved and you're involved in all of these different buildings and stuff. What they're always asking, what should I make a priority when I'm looking for new space, when I'm thinking about expanding ministry? What would you say to them?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to capacity limitations, they show up in three spots. Okay. At the end of the day, it's in the parking lot, it's in the kids space, and it's in the auditorium. And when a church is starting to feel pressure, they don't feel pressure in all three at the same time. There was one that starts to elevate and become the issue, right? So those are the three. We can get all kinds of creative with bathrooms and hallways, and we can push through a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's those three issues: kids space, parking lot, or the adult seating capacity that become the hinge points.
Okay. Now, in my understanding, Frank, in my experience is if any one of those three are starting to be at capacity, it's going to stop growth. Is that true?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can only take it for a little while.
Talk about capacity in those spaces.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Okay. So how do I know if I'm at capacity in any one of those three?
Great question. So let's start with kids ministry. Kids ministry, there is what building code says is acceptable, fire code. There's what families say are acceptable. If you, during late drop off of your ministry, late drop off.
Okay.
The senior leadership team, in my opinion, should be walking the halls, not just staying on the other side of the building. And you will see the hesitancy of parents and new parents to drop their kid off in that chaos. We have to put ourselves in the shoes of going, if I've got a 3-year-old, I've only got one kid. I'm 32 years old. I've got one kid. They're 3 years old. And I'm looking in that room. It doesn't matter how nice the person at the door is. How do I feel about that experience? Because they're looking for, my wife has this great teaching on infants and toddlers. They're looking for safety. And for preschool, they're looking for ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. Is my kid going to learn in this environment? Because that's what they're worried about, getting ready for school, right? That's their sole focus. Older in elementary school, they're looking for, did my kid have fun? Were they engaged? Okay. And so that's their evaluation matrix in the back of their mind. So they're looking at those spaces. So you may say, I have fire code capacity, but do I feel comfortable as a newer parent to drop my kid in that environment? That's your threshold, not what the architectural plan says.
Okay, so senior pastors, senior leaders, youth pastors, walk through your halls and actually put yourself, don't think of it as you, because you fit there already. You feel comfortable. You got to think like the new person who's coming in. And in parking and worship, I mean, it's basically the 80% rule, sometimes 70%, depending on how you're laid out, if you're full. So it literally is, Frank, I went out in a day and would count open spaces in our parking lot.
Absolutely. At elevation, as soon as we started building buildings at a second floor for their kids ministry, I would go and stand in the corner, whatever corner overlooks a parking lot, in a kid's classroom, not looking at kids, watching the car flow. And when I started seeing cars snake back and forth, even though we got people with their batons and their lightsabers, and they're out there trying to help, and I'm sitting there going, oh no, this is a bad experience. Pastors have a very easy solve for parking, in my opinion. When you get to the point, as far as knowing there's a problem, when you get to the point where your solution is have staff and volunteers park somewhere else to increase capacity, like move out, move away, make room, do that first. And then whatever problem you thought you were mitigating by that, when that problem re-arises, so you've made room, and then now that's been backfilled with new cars, there's no other solution. Like if you can't solve it that way, you have a parking problem. Once that's release number one. I was at a great church in San Diego, California. They moved all their volunteers and staff cars 2 years ago. Okay. All the problem that they had has just been backfilled. So now they have a massive car flow and parking problem. We can count spots. We can see how many spaces are left. There's clearly an 80-20 rule there, 90-10. But at the end of the day, watching them snake around. And when you did problem solve number one, moving volunteers and staff, when we get back to that same capacity again in your parking lot, you're done.
Okay. And then, I mean, my wife and I started attending a new church plant here in Cleveland, Ohio about a year ago. And the first morning we walked in, they were doing one service on Sunday morning. The first morning we walked in, I was like, oh man, they've got to go to two services. It was already past the 80% full, and people were standing in the back. And so what's your thoughts on worship capacity?
Yeah, I think that 80% is great, and you can buy time. So we have to be smart. So if it's after Easter of this year and you're starting to hit it, you don't launch that next service till after summer, most likely, right?
Yeah.
But what you can do is you can say, hey guys, I know it's full. We're making space. We're going to add that service in August or whatever. Keep pushing through. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. People do that for a season. We can be really clear. It's when they're looking around and saying there's nowhere for me to sit, or it's feeling crowded, and they're not hearing that we're trying to solve it. And we may say, now we can't say that forever. We're working on it. That's not very helpful. But to say, hey, over the next few months, we're putting together a plan. Hey, thanks for being patient with us. Keep on coming. Keep on coming. Because it's okay to name it, because they are already recognized. It's not like you're surprising them with information that they're full. And so, of course, with the church plan, it's like, hey, we got to make a response really quick.
Yeah, and within 3 months, they went to two services, and they did it. It was perfect. They did it, right before Easter, and they crushed it, and so good. Frank, one of the things that I've appreciated about you and watching you and talking with you over the years is that your continual commitment to your own personal growth and learning. Talk to us as leaders and just followers of Jesus about what are some things you make a priority in your own life to make sure that Frank Bealer's not getting stale and stagnant?
Greg, I love this question. So I'm naturally a learner. Okay. I'm hungry. I'm curious. Okay. So let's recognize that. So I'm good to read stuff that would be like, okay, that feels random. Here's where, I had a big shift in my life. And I would say a pivotal shift. And what was happening was I had enough friends in ministry that were releasing Christian living books that's what I was reading. And they were good. And I want to support my friends, and I want to buy their books and all the things. I started, we'll say 11, 12 years ago with what I called focus learning. And what I decided to do is for 3 months at a time, I would pick one topic. And I would read a minimum of 3 books, but I would also look for blog posts or articles and just do a little bit deeper growing. It could be in an area of spirituality. I just did a focus learning that ended up being 6 months on discernment. That intended to be a 3-month. I want to know what God says about discernment. How can I grow in discernment? Found St. Ignatius of Loyola and started reading some really cool stuff that I wouldn't have found if I was just doing superficial. Here's my chapter on discernment, right? So focus learning. I'm at a point now where I don't know where I need to stretch. I'm super excited about it. There's this guy, Dr. Wayne Chappell. He just released a book with Craig Rochelle recently on healing the hurting mind. I've actually hired him as a psychiatrist / coach for me. He works with 15, 20 people at a time to say, hey, what am I missing? Where do I need to grow? So my buddy, Carrie, we have a mutual friend, Greg, Carrie Newhoff. That's my buddy, right? We help each other. We're guardrails. We're each other's wingman, as we like to say. And so if we see an area we need to grow, we flag those, right? But now, like I've done that, or I'm not very good at that or whatever. So this is helping me grow, but it's all started with focus learning.
Okay. So you've got the focus learning, but the relationships in your life are obviously very important. Frank, what kind of experiences do you try to get yourself into there's so many conferences out there. I mean, we're getting invited to stuff all the time. What is that come back to focus, or how do you discern that kind of opportunity?
Yeah, that is a great question. I am more attracted now than ever to small gatherings and conferences, 200 or less. I was just at one 2 weeks ago that was 50. And once again, could that be a stewardship of time? I'm talking to 50 people versus 2,000 or whatever. I get that. But if I'm talking about my personal growth, so there's one thing to sow a seed. Hey, I've learned something. I want to get it to many people as possible. That's great. But there's another part of this that's how am I growing? So I'm at a conference next week. I'm a speaker. I'm not going to learn a lot. I'm teaching others, but I'm going to be intentional with that. So I've already reached out to attendees and scheduled my own dinner where these are people I can learn. We can make each other better. And so,
awesome.
going to be an exponential doing the same thing in the near future. Like I'm more excited about the rooftop gathering with a handful of people that were meeting at this Mexican cantina and the tradition we've started there with those 40, 50 people than seeing the masses of people along the way. So that's how I'm filtering is where can I get in a room with 40, 50, maybe 100, 200 people max and build some relationships and make each other sharper. I'm not in need of more content. I need to be able to press in and ask good questions.
So good. Frank, we're going to be at Exponential together. I encourage everyone, like, that's a great place to start. But one of the things that I want to lean into here that I don't think leaders take enough advantage of is you're going to be at Exponential. I'm going to be at Exponential. I got to tell you, Frank, I'm doing the same thing. I've already got meetings scheduled. Now, I'm going to be teaching at Exponential. We're doing a preaching cohort thing. We got all kinds of stuff going on with Stadia. But some of the things I'm most excited about are the coffees that I've got scheduled, again, with these great leaders that we're already going to be there. And you know what I had to do? I just had to email them or say, hey, how can I text them and say, can I get, 45 minutes of your time at this conference? I want to ask you about what you're seeing in AI and how we can use that in church planting. How often do you do that? And do people respond well when you reach out like that?
Great question. There's never a time I don't do that. Never. That's a stewardship thing. If I'm going and I'm just going, hey, whatever happens, happens. I know how I'm wired. I'm an introvert. And so I can be extroverted in my personality. I have a big personality. I'm an introvert. I just need to find one person. So if I don't actually think about it and try to be a good steward, who can I meet with? Who can I connect with? I've found that most leaders are very open-handed and maybe even too generous with their time and willing to serve and connect. They appreciate planning and reaching out ahead. Now, I will say this, don't ask the person that's hosting the conference. When I was working with Orange, okay, I'm on the team at Orange, the number of people that are like, hey, I'm going to be in town in Atlanta this certain week. I'm like, yeah, you're coming to our conference. I'm a little busy, right? That's going to be really hard. But any other gathering, man, and don't just shoot for the person that's on the stage because that may not be the person you need to learn from. There are other ministry leaders there that are ahead of you or somebody. I've got a friend who is currently a church planner in Arizona, okay, that they're looking at a Macy's building. They know another church planner in Colorado that just renovated a Macy's building. I'm like, those guys, Daniel and Brandon, need to connect. That has way more power to it than random, hey, tell me how you're growing, like arbitrarily, and what are you seeing? I don't even know what to do with that. I love what you said, Greg. You said, man, I want to learn more about AI. So I'm going to go talk to so-and-so. I want to learn more about so-and-so. I want to drill down on that. Be specific on what you're trying to learn, not go sit at somebody's feet and say, hey, tell me some stuff. Like that's not pointed and helpful.
Yeah. Own the topic of conversation. Yes. Don't put the onus on the person you're meeting with, right? Hey, Frank, the other thing is that I love to do at conferences and that I've done over the years is like, if I when I was senior pastor of River Tree, I would, our elders maybe went to one conference every, once a year. But like if I'm at a conference, I'll never forget, I had lunch set up with them with Ken Blanchard, and I had another lunch set up with Bob Russell, who was leading Southeast Christian at the time. And I would give, Ken was a big golfer. And so I just gave him 24 Titleist Pro V1s at the time. That's all. He was thrilled, right? He was just happy to meet with an eldership and talk about strategy and leadership. So take opportunity to take your team, right?
Absolutely. I think taking your team and at least taking a wingman or one person with you. If you can't do, if you can't coordinate it all or this is last minute and we're talking about something that's going to happen the next month and you can't get everybody to go, who are you always taking with you? I don't think, certainly since I've been at Generis, I can't think of a time I didn't take somebody with me, either expose them to the conversation to listen and learn or to go have their own conversations, whatever it may be. I can't fathom that. That's part of the stewardship is the windshield time we get with that person. That's a team member that we're getting travel time with. That's gold. And then the exposure they get to other leaders that are affirming or coaching us up is gold.
Okay, Frank, we've just got a few minutes left. You're out more than most leaders in the world, and you're seeing trends and different things going on. What are some of the things you're seeing that are most exciting, most challenging? What are you watching right now as the world's moving forward, as our country's in, what's arguably one of its most challenging seasons right now? What are you excited about? What are you worried about?
Yeah, I am excited about some of the short studies, but studies that are out there around what's happening in the hearts of 20s and 30-year-olds and their attendance patterns. I'm excited about it, but I will say I'm just as concerned because I don't know that I think churches are applauding. I just don't know that they're doing anything about it. They're like, yeah, praise God. I'm so glad that that's happening. Yes, we need that. Guys, everybody should feel the weight of this. I hope they do. There's a disproportionate percentage, higher percentage than ever before, that kids that go off to college are returning back to their parents' home after college. Okay, not just for the summer. It's over 50% are coming back.
Kids going to college this fall. We're launching him.
They're coming back, and where are they going back to? Hopefully their parents' church, or they're re-entering in a different season. When they left, they were in youth ministry. Okay. When they come back, oftentimes they're in this in between. And because we're not in a college town, we don't know what to do with those 20 somethings. And so we don't change anything, and we don't speak to them or acknowledge them, but they're coming back. And so I just feel this weight of there's a hunger, there's a fervor in sports right now. It's actually trendy to be a believer, whatever you want to do with that. So I'm saying there's all these influencers out there that are speaking this over 20 and 30 somethings. And I don't know that we're stewarding it well. The other thing that we're seeing is a trend. It's just a national trend, is people are having kids later in life. This is changing the way we do family ministry, because before, let's go back 2-3 decades. If young people left, we knew they'd come back most likely once they had kids. Why did they come back? They were having kids younger, and life wasn't figured out yet. They could use some support system from the church. Now, because these adults are having kids later in life, in their early 30s, they're more established. They're no longer driving the car that their parents gave them. They're no longer, or helped them buy. They're in their second career. They probably moved from one place to another. They're adulting in a different way. So now when they have one kid injected in the mix, they're not in that same state of, I don't know what to do on Sunday. I could use some childcare and some help. Now they're going, should we go for a hike as a family, or should we take and separate and drop them off in kids ministry and go apart? They see them both as spiritual and good. And so how are we creating family experiences on Sunday morning where they still get to take that selfie or that photo? We're making progress as a family together. So if we're not putting resources in the hands of 30 somethings and upper 20 somethings that are having kids to say, here's what I want you to do after church, spark these conversations, they're going, it might have been better for me to go for a hike or a walk on the Greenway than to come to church, because I can capture that content online and I just want to get closer to my kid. So if we're not facilitating that, they're putting a odd and new juxtaposition of family experience versus church. And they're not seeing them as good versus bad. They're saying, I can get the content myself. So unless you're helping me, equipping me, and raising and sparking conversations with my kid, then I may have a better time on the Greenway.
All right, Frank Bealer, CEO of Generis, absolute gold. Frank, we're so proud and can't wait to see how Generis just explodes under your leadership in a very positive way. And so thanks for being on the Church Planting Podcast, Frank.
Thanks, Greg. Honored to be here.
Thanks for listening to the Church Planting Podcast. The Church Planting Podcast is part of the Stadia Podcast Network. To find more great episodes and to see how Stadia can help you start thriving, growing, multiplying churches for the next generation, be sure to check out stadia.org/podcasts.